My children put me in a subpar nursing home against my will, telling the staff she exaggerates her ailments for attention. My daughter sighed dramatically and said, "We just can't handle her anymore." They took my phone to help me settle in. But I befriended a retired lawyer in the next room who noticed the bruises on my arms, and together we made a plan. I never thought it would be my own kids who did this to me. I'm 73 years old. I've lived in the same house in a quiet part of Rockford, Illinois, for over 30 years. Raised all 3 of my children there. I gave them every piece of myself. Their father walked out when the youngest was still in diapers, so I worked nights cleaning offices and weekends doing laundry for other people to make sure my kids didn't feel the absence. I went without a lot. New shoes, vacations, even proper dental work. Always so they could have what they needed. And for a while, I believed they appreciated it. I believed they loved me back. The truth crept up slowly. It started right after I had a mild stroke 2 years ago. Nothing dramatic, just some numbness in my arm and trouble forming words for a day or 2. I recovered almost fully, but that's when the shift began. My oldest daughter, Brenda, suddenly wanted to be involved in my finances. Said she just wanted to take the pressure off. I didn't argue. I thought maybe she was looking out for me. But soon my bank statements stopped coming. My debit card was declined twice at the pharmacy. When I asked Brenda, she brushed me off and said the bank was making mistakes. Then Martin, my son, he began showing up unannounced. Not to visit, but to assess things. "You really shouldn't be climbing stairs," he'd say. Or, "You're keeping too much stuff around. Someone's going to trip." Once he asked if I had a will. I laughed, said not to worry, I wasn't going anywhere soon. He didn't laugh back. The worst, though, was Haley, my youngest. We used to be close, she'd call me almost daily. But after the stroke, she grew distant, short on the phone, always busy. I figured she was just overwhelmed with her kids, but I'd come to learn later that she was helping the other 2 plan what they did to me. I fell one morning in the kitchen. I slipped on a damp spot near the sink. It wasn't serious, just a bruised hip and a scrape on my arm, but it rattled me. I called Brenda and told her. I wasn't asking for help. I just didn't want her to worry. She showed up 3 hours later with Haley and Martin. They walked in like I'd summoned them for an intervention. Brenda said, "We've already talked about this. You're not safe here." Martin added, "We've found a care facility. You can't keep living like this, Mom." I told them I didn't agree. I wasn't ready. I needed a little help, sure, but I was still capable. I could still cook, clean, bathe, dress, take my pills. I just needed someone to stop by maybe once or twice a week. That's all. Haley didn't even look at me when she said, "We're doing what's best. It's decided." I begged them to let me call Barbara, my best friend since high school, a retired RN. Brenda said no. Said I needed to adjust first before involving other people. Then she reached for my phone and said, "Let me hold on to this while you settle in." I should have screamed. I should have fought harder. But something in me just gave out. They packed me into the back seat like luggage. 1 suitcase. No goodbye to my neighbors. No chance to lock the door behind me. I didn't even get to bring my knitting bag. They drove me to a place called Glenview Care Center, about 20 minutes out of town, tucked between a rundown strip mall and an empty field full of broken glass and cigarette butts. It was not what they told me it would be. This wasn't one of those pleasant retirement communities with walking trails and social mixers. It was an underfunded, overcrowded nursing facility with staff who were either burned out or straight up cruel. You could smell the neglect as soon as you walked in. That awful mix of bleach and stale urine. There were residents screaming behind closed doors. People strapped into wheelchairs lining the hallway like forgotten dolls. They signed me in. Didn't even walk me to my room. As they left, Brenda smiled at the nurse behind the counter and said, "She exaggerates her ailments for attention, just so you're aware." Then Haley chimed in, "We just can't handle her anymore." They were gone before I could speak. The first week was a blur. The food was awful. Cold eggs, dry meatloaf, powdered potatoes. I was constantly cold, and no one brought me extra blankets. They gave me medication I didn't recognize, told me I had no choice, told me it was in my chart. I asked for my phone every day. Staff said there was no phone listed under my name. When I demanded to call my family, they told me they were unavailable. Then the bruises started. Small at first. One on my wrist after an aide yanked me out of bed too hard. Another on my upper arm when I reached for a tray and got scolded for touching things. One day I collapsed in the hallway. I think I blacked out. When I woke up, I had a busted lip and blood on my sleeve. They said I fell. They said I was confused. But I remember the male nurse's angry face. I remember him shoving me too hard when I didn't respond fast enough. I began to fade mentally, emotionally. I started forgetting the day of the week. My legs got weaker. I started to believe what they were telling me, that I was a burden, that I'd imagined things, that maybe I was losing it. Then I met Walter. He was in a room next to mine. Gruff. Quiet. Mostly kept to himself. But one day, in the rec room, he noticed the bruises on my arms. He looked at me and said, "That from here?" I nodded, barely. He gave me a sharp look. "Don't lie. I've seen this place for what it is. Been watching it for months." That's when he told me he used to be a lawyer. Probate and elder law. He'd helped families fight facilities like this. He told me he ended up here after a bad fall, but he hadn't lost his mind or his fire. His nephew still visited him every week and brought him a prepaid phone and copies of the Chicago Tribune. Walter let me borrow his phone late at night. Told me exactly what to write down: dates, times, staff names, meds given, words used. He warned me that if we were caught, they'd make things worse. But he also told me something that brought me back to life. You're not crazy. You're not helpless. You're not done. I sent a letter, 3 copies. 1 to the state long-term care ombudsman. 1 to Barbara. 1 to the Illinois Department of Public Health. And that's when I began to feel the tide shift. But that wasn't enough. Brenda, Martin, Haley, they didn't just put me in that place. They trapped me there, lied about me, stole from me, made it so I couldn't even call for help. They betrayed everything I ever gave them, and I was going to make sure they paid for it. All of it. Things didn't change overnight, but they started shifting. 2 weeks after I sent the letters with Walter's help, a woman from the ombudsman's office came to Glenview. She wore a badge and carried a clipboard. She asked for me by name. They tried to say I was too tired for visitors, but I heard her voice down the hall. Firm, loud, and not someone to mess with. They brought her to my room. I'll never forget the way she looked at me when she saw the bruises. Sharp, calculating, serious. She didn't waste time with small talk. She asked direct questions. When did it start? Who was involved? Where was my phone? Who had power of attorney? I told her everything. Every detail Walter helped me remember. Every time I was ignored. Every time they told me I was confused or a burden. Every bruise. Every missing medication. She stayed for nearly an hour, then left to talk to the staff. The next day, things got worse. The aides who used to ignore me now avoided me completely. Meals came late and cold. I rang the call button once and waited 42 minutes before anyone came. The male nurse, Brent, made a comment under his breath when he gave me my pills. Some people don't know when to keep quiet. Walter warned me. He said sometimes when people like that feel a storm coming, they lash out harder before they go down. But he also said something else. Make noise. They expect you to sit there. Don't sit. Don't give them silence. So I got louder. I asked every single staff member in front of other patients why I wasn't allowed to have a phone. I asked why there were no cameras in the halls. I asked why Brent was still on shift even though I filed a complaint. I knew I sounded like a pain in the ass, but I didn't care. I wanted witnesses. And Walter? He kept gathering paperwork. His nephew brought him court forms and records. He helped me dig through what Brenda had been doing with my finances. That's when we found the first real proof. Brenda had transferred $46,000 from my retirement account into a joint account with her name on it. Over 6 months. Quietly. Without telling me. Martin had taken out a credit card in my name, used it for a home improvement project he never finished. Haley, it turned out, had power of attorney, and she'd signed off on the transfer to Glenview using a medical letter she pressured a tired urgent care doctor into writing. I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt stupid. Used. Small. I raised those 3 people. They weren't kids anymore. They were cold, calculating adults who had slowly stripped away my control, one piece at a time, and dumped me like a bag of trash in a place they didn't even bother to research. A place with violations going back years. Walter looked at me one night and said, "It's not just about you anymore. What they did. That's financial abuse. Elder neglect. You have a case." I remember sitting in my hard plastic bed, holding that printout of my drained retirement account and whispering, "I want to burn their lives to the ground." But I didn't want to just fight. I wanted to win. So we started planning. Step 1 was getting out. Legally. Safely. For that, I needed 2 things. My own phone and a doctor who wasn't on the Glenview payroll. Barbara came through on both. She drove 3 hours to visit me the next weekend, phone in hand, recorder in her purse. She wore a church lady smile the whole time she was talking to staff, but behind it, she was documenting everything. Every lie, every contradiction, every time they tried to deflect questions. She brought in a friend, Dr. Nguyen, who did an unofficial assessment of my physical and mental health. Her report made it clear I was capable of living independently with minor support. Glenview had no medical reason to keep me there. We mailed the report to Haley and demanded immediate release from the facility. Haley didn't respond for days. Then came a typed letter from some lawyer she hired, claiming I was experiencing signs of cognitive decline and that removing me from care would pose a danger to her well-being and others. That was the moment something snapped in me. Haley, my baby girl, who used to cry on my lap when she had nightmares, was now pretending I had dementia just to keep her hands on my house and my money. Walter helped me file a petition with the court for restoration of capacity. We also filed for an emergency review of the power of attorney Haley was using. Barbara backed it all with medical proof. Walter's nephew, God bless him, took everything we gathered and handed it to a real lawyer. We got a court date. The facility was served with notice. The staff looked rattled. Suddenly, I was getting regular meals again. Brent got pulled from the wing. They knew, but my kids didn't. Not yet. So I waited. And while I waited, I wrote a letter to each of them. A real one. Told them everything I knew. What I'd found. What I had copies of. What I was planning. I didn't send them yet. I was saving them for the perfect moment. The court date was set for 2 weeks out. 2 weeks felt like a lifetime in Glenview. The staff was tense. They knew something was coming. I was being treated better, sort of. The bruises stopped, but the smiles were fake and the kindness forced. I kept my head down and let them believe I was done fighting. What they didn't know was that Walter and I had planned for more than just freedom. We wanted exposure. Walter's nephew, Greg, helped us contact a local investigative journalist. Not someone big and flashy. Just a reporter for a mid-sized local outlet in Rockford who had covered elder abuse cases before. Her name was Clara, and she was sharp. She came by Glenview pretending to be a volunteer. I told her everything under the guise of casual conversation in the courtyard. She had a hidden recorder in her purse. Clara's story wasn't going to publish right away. She wanted to wait until the court date, to tie it all together. But she promised it would go public the minute a ruling came down. Meanwhile, Barbara helped me get a second opinion from another doctor, someone fully licensed who agreed to submit a written affidavit to the court confirming I was mentally sound, and Glenview was medically unnecessary. That's when the first real twist hit. I got a call on Walter's phone from someone claiming to be from the Office of Adult Protective Services. They said they needed to speak to me urgently about my complaints. The voice was calm, rehearsed, but something felt off. So I gave the phone back to Walter and mouthed, "Can you trace this?" He called Greg. 5 minutes later, Greg told us the number wasn't from APS. It was traced to a VoIP service, registered under an LLC connected to Martin's home renovation business. They were trying to fake state interference, trying to rattle me into backing off. I stayed quiet about it, pretended nothing happened, but I printed the call log and saved it. Another piece of evidence. A few days later, Brenda showed up at Glenview. I hadn't seen her since the day she dropped me off like a bag of trash. She waltzed in with a forced smile, holding a grocery bag. "I brought you your favorite cookies," she said. "I didn't touch them. I want my phone back." She laughed. "You're still on that?" I stared her dead in the eye. "I have a court date. You'll be there. So will a judge. And a reporter." Her face froze. Just for a second. Then she leaned in and whispered, "We did what was necessary. You were going to hurt yourself. You were going to ruin things. You're confused." I smiled, cold, deliberate. "No." I was confused. "But I'm not anymore. And you should be very, very worried." She left without saying goodbye. 2 nights after that, I was woken up at 3 a.m. by shouting in the hallway. I got up, my knees aching, and shuffled to the door. Walter was standing just outside his room, hands clenched. His bed had been flipped over. His suitcase was gone. Staff claimed it was routine sanitation, but it was obvious retaliation. They'd found out about the court papers. Or maybe the journalist. Maybe both. Walter didn't say much, but I could see the look in his eyes. "You still with me?" he asked. I nodded. To the end. Then came the second twist. Greg got a tip. Brenda and Martin were preparing to sell my house. My house. The one I'd lived in for over 30 years. They were claiming I was being moved to permanent memory care and wouldn't be returning. Greg pulled the listing. It was already online. Photos, price, motivated sellers, the whole thing. They were doing it behind my back. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about neglect. It was theft. Coordinated, cold-blooded theft. They wanted me dead on paper. So I made a call. I had Barbara contact the bank directly. We gathered all my financial documents, account numbers, legal filings, and handed them to a fraud investigator. That same week, I authorized the lawyer Greg hired to file a motion to freeze the sale of the house. We had just enough time before it hit escrow. A hold was placed. Martin and Brenda wouldn't be getting a dime. And Haley? She sent me a letter. A handwritten one. Sloppy, full of crossed-out words. She begged me to drop the case. Said she never meant to hurt me. That she was pressured by Brenda and Martin. That she only wanted what was best, and that I was starting to sound like a different person. I kept the letter. I didn't reply, because she'd already made her choice the day she signed that medical authorization to lock me in Glenview. Now, we were 1 week away from the court hearing, and they still didn't know what I had planned for after the ruling, because getting out? That was only the beginning. The court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday at 9:30 a.m. I barely slept the night before. I sat in the back of the Glenview transport van in a loose sweater and slacks, hands folded in my lap, Walter next to me in a blazer that didn't quite fit anymore but still made him look sharp. Barbara met us at the courthouse steps with Greg and our attorney, Ms. Castillo. She was young but sharp. No wasted words. She carried a binder 2 inches thick with every document we'd gathered. Inside, Brenda, Martin, and Haley sat with their lawyer. None of them looked at me. Good. The hearing was to determine if I was mentally competent to revoke power of attorney and leave Glenview on my own terms. There were 2 doctors ready to speak on my behalf. Barbara had filed a statement as well. Walter submitted a letter too, which the judge had already reviewed. I kept my eyes forward as Ms. Castillo opened with our evidence. The financial records, the forged consent form for my placement, the drained retirement account, the pending house sale. The judge's eyebrows went up higher with every document. Then came the photos, pictures of my bruises, printouts of emails Brenda had sent to the facility telling them I was unreliable and confused. A copy of the letter Haley sent me, begging me to drop everything. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up slowly and faced the judge. My voice shook a little, but I didn't hold back. I raised 3 children on my own. I worked until my hands bled. I missed meals so they could eat. I kept a roof over their heads. When I got older and needed help, they didn't step up. They shut me away, took my money, lied about me. And they didn't do it because they were scared or overwhelmed. They did it because it was easier than dealing with me. I paused, looked over at them. They didn't put me in Glenview to keep me safe. They put me there to shut me up and take what I had left. The judge ruled in under 15 minutes. Power of attorney revoked. Status of mental competence fully restored. Emergency injunction to stop the house sale granted. I was free, but I wasn't done. I left Glenview that same afternoon, packed my bag, hugged Walter goodbye. He had 2 more weeks before his discharge, but we promised to stay in touch. Barbara took me home. My house. The locks had been changed, but our lawyer had arranged a locksmith. We walked through each room together. I cried when I saw how much they'd taken. Photo albums, keepsakes, my jewelry. Most of it was missing. I didn't even have my old recipes. That night, I slept in my own bed. The next morning, Clara published the article. Trapped and Silenced: One Woman's Fight Against Elder Abuse in Illinois. My story, front and center. Names included. Facility violations exposed. My children's roles laid out with every receipt and screenshot. The photos of my bruises were at the top of the page. The story went viral locally, and then it spread. State agencies started sniffing around Glenview. The director resigned 3 days later. 2 nurses were suspended. Brent, the one who shoved me, was fired. As for my kids, the lawyer helped me file criminal fraud charges against Brenda and Martin. Identity theft, unauthorized use of funds, and elder financial abuse. They were both arrested. Martin spent a night in jail before his lawyer got him out. Brenda tried to deny it all, until she saw the bank records and the email trail. Haley wasn't charged, but I had my attorney send her a letter. She was removed from my will. Permanently. They tried to fight it, claimed I was acting out of spite. The judge threw out their motion without a hearing. 2 months later, the house was legally restored to my name only. I sold it, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I bought a small condo near Barbara. Quiet, safe, mine. And with part of the money, I funded a new local watchdog group for elder abuse victims. We called it the Glenview Project. I visit Walter every Sunday. His nephew got him into a better facility with proper care and dignity. He says I saved him, but I know the truth. We saved each other. As for my children, they lost more than just money. They lost the only person who ever stood in their corner when life got hard. They lost my trust, my respect, my love. And they'll never get any of it back. I used to think revenge would look like yelling or slamming doors. But no. Revenge was standing tall in a courtroom while they sat there, small and scared, knowing I was free. And they were exposed.